good morning and Happy New Year. So as you can see, we got the new heartbeat ready and we have the new legs ready. Everything's all done, but before we can plop these guys in, that old girl, we got a few things we got to address here. And that's namely talking about all this rust, because don't want to put this back together with all the rust. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna get the rest of the frame here looking like this here, and I'm gonna show you step by step exactly how to accomplish this. And I've tested this on the old Rust Max. I rebuilt the frame on that, as you can see here, and this has held up for quite a few snowstorms, salt incursions, and everything else. So what we're gonna do is transform the back side, and everything that's gonna be in the way once that engine and transmission is, from that there to what we got in front. Before we get started here, what we need to do is worry about these parts here, because they're gonna take a little bit of effort. So, through the power of time travel, we'll get these ball joints out. And here we are in the future. Now, before we disassemble these any further, what we're going to do, we're going to stamp both the driver's side and the passenger side quick so they don't get mixed up. Shouldn't need to do it, but it's easier to take a little precaution than regret later. So, let's get to stamping. So, as you can tell, still a little rusty in here. It's all in the air. That's why one of these is important. And you probably have a couple questions right now of why we did some things how we did. But before I answer that, if you like this type of content, think about leaving a like, maybe subscribing, leave a comment, let me know. Feel free to. If not, that's okay. But anyways, you're probably thinking, well, I'm gonna sandblast these and the other parts. Why did we just go through the hassle of scraping, beating off all those big chunks, and wire wheeling this stuff? And the answer is very simple. It's just to speed up the sandblast process, make it a little faster, and not to use up as much media. Could have totally skipped all this and just thrown the stuff in the blast cabinet, but then we would have been at the blast cabinet for quite a while, because sandblasting isn't great at getting all those big clumps and everything else off. We use the scraper to get rid of the grease, dirt, and other things on top. Then we use the needle gun, or scaler, whatever you want to call it, to beat off the big chunks. And then finally, a combination of the big wire wheel to make it fast for getting a lot of it done. And then a little wire wheel on a Dremel just to get those tight nooks and crannies. And this was just to speed up the sandblast process. So let me finish doing the other parts, and then I'll see you over at the blast cabinet.
Alright, we got all of our parts sandblasted, and to address something you're probably wondering is, why are these bushings still here? Well, left those in there just to protect those bores from sandblasting and cleaning, because we want the new bushings to be a nice press fit. But before we can powder coat, we gotta press that out. We're gonna blow these off and wipe them down. And before we actually powder coat, we're going to go one step before, because we can just slap on a top layer of powder coat, call it a day. But that's not going to offer us the most rust protection. So what we're going to do is actually put down another barrier that will help and keep rust away. But before we get to powder coating this, while I get these bushings pressed out and these parts cleaned up ready for powder coat, I want to actually refer you to Mike 2 here. That way, we can get this frame done, and he's gonna go through everything with the frame with you guys. So I'll see you shortly. Alright, so I'm gonna guide you through with the frame here. We're gonna need a couple tools, mainly just an angle grinder, small Dremel, scraper, needle gun. All depends on how bad the rust is. And your project might be a little different, but once we do that, we gotta be mindful with our coating. We don't want anything heavy, and we don't want anything that'll trap moisture and cause more rust under. So I'll show you later what I'm going to use. I've tested this before. Works great. The old truck outside, she's been rocking this for quite a while. Quite a few snowstorms, salt incursions. Still holding up great. But let's actually get to cleaning some rust first. That way we can get to the coating part. All that taken care of, we now got parts that are ready to be coated. And if you noticed, yeah, I did get a good time lapse so you can see what I was doing with this cross member. It's a little hard to film under the Trailblazer right now, just not enough room. I don't want to jimmy jack that up just to make room to get some good footage. I got everything wiped down, and it's important that you want to blow everything off with compressed air and then take a product like mineral spirits or acetone and give everything a good wipe down. You don't want dirt and other debris that's just left behind getting into your coating. So with this, we're actually going to use primarily one product at the moment to do all of our surface coats, and that's this Rust-Oleum Rust Reformer. The purpose of this is we knock down all the big chunks, but there's still little bits and pieces of rust here and there in the pitting and other places. Just too small, we're not going to reliably get. And this is going to convert all that rust into something that's not rust, actually paintable. But I'm not a fan of hard coatings, and what this does is actually provide a very soft coating, and it's breathable for the metal, which is important when you're trying to combat oxidation, whether that's through salt, water, or other means, and turns into our good old buddy rust, iron oxide. With this soft coating that can breathe, this will help just prevent any moisture from being trapped underneath that could slowly rot out in time. And that's why I don't like PR15, because it does create a hard impact resistant coating, but it can trap that little bit of moisture under, and in a couple years time underneath, it could actually rot the metal out just from that moisture being trapped. So with this, we're also going to combo this later on with another product, and I'm going to use fluid film. And what that does, that'll provide an extra barrier on top that will self-heal. It'll just provide another means to keep salt, water, and other things from direct contact. And unfortunately, with this little system I'm going to do, this will need maintenance, so in time, gonna have to go up, touch up coats, and keep applying both these products. This will create the most rust-resistant coating we can possibly get, short of taking this whole thing down, sandblasting it with frame off type of restoration, sandblasting, heating the steel up to get all the moisture out, and providing a hard coating, whether that's powder coat or something else along those lines, because that'd be the only way we could absolutely guarantee through all conditions we don't have to worry. It's just not in the space and time and budget constraints to do a frame off restoration, especially on this. So we just want to make this last as long as possible, and with rust reformer and fluid film, it's going to help. And what we're also going to do underneath later on, when we apply the fluid film, which that isn't going to be in this video, so sorry, but I'll break that one too. I just don't want to create that type of mess in here right now, especially with putting this back together. But the fluid film is going to get sprayed underneath all the panels, the whole body, and inside all the nooks and crannies, just to provide that extra barrier to keep rust away. And anytime we're using spray can product, something like this is really great to have, especially when you're talking about doing large coatings. And this will just make it easier. It'll help relieve a little bit of finger ache. Turn this more into a spray gun. So with that, why don't we get to some precision mixing of the product, and we'll actually get to applying stuff and having pretty much like a new looking frame. Mike 2 did a fantastic job taking care of this frame and this cross member. This flat black looks absolutely gorgeous. He did a great job. And I will say, I'm appreciative of it, because that's just going to make sure our Trailblazer lasts a heck of a lot longer. But let's get on to the powder coating now. So, with the power of magic, let's get it set up. Whew. Careful there, kids. When you're phasing things out of midair, that could have been real bad by 2 more steps. But everything's all set up. What we're going to use as our first barrier is a zinc primer. And what this is going to do, this zinc is going to be the sacrificial layer. So if any rust tries to form under the powder coat, it'll first have to go through the zinc. The zinc will bond to it and neutralize it before it can actually do any damage to our parts. And normally, I'm a firm user of prismatic powders for my powder coating things, but being we got flat black for everything else, I want to try it, and I think this would be a good thing. I got some of the Harbor Freight matte black. I think that's going to go great with what's actually on the frame, and it's going to help hide a lot of the pitting and other little flaws from 20 some years of damage. So, let's get the powder coating. I do gotta say, the zinc primer came out great, and I can't wait to see this in flat black. I do want to make a note though, like in these bushing bores, we do want to make sure we don't get excessive buildup. That way it's not as hard to press the new bushings in. And in this case, I didn't have a big enough silicone plug, so I just took brushed it out. The other ones, I did have plugs that would fit, so be mindful, you don't want buildup in areas that are important not to have it. I can definitely say, I think my inspection guy is going to be pretty impressed when he sees this. These old parts, they came out great. Now the backing plates have some pitting and it shows through the powder coat, but they're now protected and shouldn't have to worry about that anymore. I mean, it just looks great. And that Harbor Freight matte black, just check out some of these parts. Like, it don't get any better for reusing 20-some-year-old parts that have seen salt, water, everything else that causes good old rust. So, with that all said, I'm happy and I can't wait to get this back together. And hopefully that's soon, so we can impress that inspection guy. So until next time,